Well, good morning and welcome once again to Elevenses. I'm Kevin Williams of Survival Skills Rider Training, and this is my news, topical views, and controversial talking points show. So settle yourself down for the next 30 minutes or so while I take you through some of the latest biking news stories. What have we got for you in the show today? Well, a former Welsh under-20 rugby star has been left with life-changing injuries that threaten his career after a motorcycle crash. Essex have called in community policing officers to help combat motorcycle theft. A man stole two Buells because he thought they were scrap. 120 Royal Enfield 120th anniversary models allegedly sold out in 120 seconds. DOT have launched 2 new motorcycles at the NEC, which closes today. Synthetic fuel produces the same NOx pollutants as ordinary fuel, so no great surprise there. And today's talking point from an article I read, actually written for a New Zealand audience: should older riders swap their bikes for a trike? There's something for you to think about. Ready to comment on that item when we get there. So settle yourselves down for the next 30 minutes or so while I'll take you through the show. But before we go any further, let's just remind you about my Xmas voucher offer. They're available now from my coffee shop. There's a post giving you precise details on how they work. You can find that here. I'll just putting it up online for you. In short, there are 3 vouchers. They range from £35 to £80 to purchase, and they're worth a bit more if you actually redeem one. So the £35 voucher, for example, will be worth £40, which just happens to be the cost of one of my online coaching sessions. So even if you're not in my immediate vicinity, you want to give somebody a gift of an online course, or even take one yourself, then that voucher will be perfect. The £80 one will get you £20 off a training course next year. So it'll be worth £100 when you redeem it. The full details are, as I say, are on the link which I've just popped up on screen. So do pop over there and have a look, see what whether they're of interest to you. They're available to buy till the end of February, so you aren't restricted just till Christmas. Right, so on with today's news. Well, former Wales under-20 international Ivan Phillips has sadly been left with what the police are calling life-changing injuries after a recent motorcycle crash. According to South Wales Police, he was in a stable condition in Morriston Hospital in Swansea after a serious traffic incident last Sunday, which apparently involved 2 motorcycles. His Cardiff club coach spoke to media on Wednesday, and he appeared to suggest that Phillips will be forced to retire. He said to have a career cut short through injury is very upsetting. And he went on to acknowledge that the difficulties caused by the accident won't finish tomorrow or the next day. They'll be continuous forevermore. Obviously, it's tragic, he said, very upsetting for all, especially himself and his family. The incident happened in Swansea, and South Wales Police have appealed for witnesses to come forward, as well as anybody who may have some dash cam footage relating to the crash. The statement from the police said the collision involved 2 motorcycles, a green Triumph Street Scrambler and a Kawasaki. One rider was taken to hospital where he remains and is being treated for life-changing injuries. Right, okay, so don't forget, I forgot to mention it earlier, if you have any comments or questions about anything in the show, do ask away. I'll try and get back to you if I can while we're online. If I can't make it online, I will respond at the end of the show. Any feedback, any observations, anything you'd want me to cover in a future show, I'd be more than happy to try and tackle that. Right, on with the news. Volunteer police officers, usually known as special constables, with the Essex force have been mobilised in the fight against motorcycle and moped theft and the associated criminal activity. And Essex police say their volunteer officers logged over 1,000 hours during a single day as high visibility patrols and arrests were carried out. One stolen scooter was recovered. Special Superintendent Chris Glidden said the officers also attended various rural events and praised the brilliant community engagement. And then he went on to say, we had a very successful night taking some dangerous offenders off the streets and safeguarding the public. Meanwhile, in Swale, Kent Police community sport officers have also been fighting bike theft on the south side of the Thames. In a regular patrol in Sittingbourne, 2 PCSOs discovered a stolen moped and returned it to their owner. So how bad actually is the theft problem? Well, according to a poll conducted by the BMF, the British Motorcyclists Federation, 1 in every 46 registered motorcycles was stolen in 2018, highlighting the vulnerability of our mode of transport to theft. According to the data from over 27,000 stolen motorcycles in the UK throughout 2018, the top hotspots for bike theft are Bristol, East Yorkshire, Herefordshire, Cheshire and East Sussex. Don't forget, if you want to make sure you catch this show every Wednesday and Sunday, 11 o'clock, it normally goes out live. Very occasionally I have to do a recorded show for you. But just set an alarm, and if you can't catch it live here on Facebook, you can catch up later, and you can also go to my YouTube channel and see the shows over there. We have some people looking in this morning. Martin's looked in, and so has Tony, and Sue says she's here live today rather than on catch up. Nice to see you all, folks. Right, so up in Scotland, a bike thief came up with a novel excuse for stealing 2 bikes. Kevin Smith, 53, appeared in the dock at Aberdeen Sheriff's Court and pleaded guilty to 2 charges of stealing motorcycles from a street in Torry, which is near Aberdeen. The bikes were estimated to be worth around £3,000 each. The court was told that the owner of the bikes actually lives in Edinburgh, but had another property in Torry, and due to the COVID-19 restrictions, had not been back to ride the bikes regularly. So the bikes were left secured with what were described as kryptonite shackles, and the owner had last seen the bikes in person in July 2021. Now, around August the 10th, the owner was advised that Aberdeen City Council had actually placed an abandonment notice on both the motorcycles, giving the owner till August the 17th to remove them. But on the evening of August the 11th, he'd received a phone call from a friend advising him that both the motorcycles had gone. Now, inquiries with Aberdeen City Council confirmed they'd not removed the bike, so police were contacted. The police got hold of some CCTV footage, and that showed 2 men loading the 2 motorcycles into the rear of a vehicle before driving off. And the court was told that from the CCTV footage, they identified the accused as the owner of the vehicle. The police went to Smith's address with a search warrant and duly found and recovered the 2 stolen motorcycles. Smith was charged with theft and under caution stated, "Sorry, I thought they were scrap." His defence agent, Debbie Guinevere, she told the court that Smith had considered the bikes fair game due to being left on the street. She said he'd been aware the bikes had been left for some time, and when he saw the abandonment notice on them, he thought he would be able to take them. He accepts that this was a completely foolish mistake, and when police officers attended, he cooperated fully. This is not something he's going to repeat, and he apologises to the court and the owner of the bikes. Sheriff Hodge told Smith that at his age, he should probably know better than helping yourself to very large items without making a few inquiries. And she sentenced him to a 12-month community payback order and ordered him to carry out 60 hours of unpaid work. The bikes, oh yes, they were the ones that were mistaken from scrap, an orange Buell Ulysses and a black Buell Firebolt. Now, I recently mentioned a plan from the northeast of England which is funding off-road riding tracks as a means of giving young riders somewhere to go, as a means of tackling antisocial behaviour. And now the Irish government is funding what they call scrambler and quad bike tracks in a bid to reduce antisocial behaviour by young bike users in Dublin and Limerick. Now, they're making available just under €200,000 of funding that'll be used for 8 initiatives, and it'll provide not just the place that the bikes can be used, but they'll invest in training in bike skills and also maintenance and safety. And Andrew O'Byrne of the Moyross Development Company in Limerick, who's one of the main beneficiaries of the Department of Justice funds, says not everyone will agree or think it's a good idea. Personally, I do, but with that needs to come legislation and enforcement. And in fact, the money is part of what's being described as a carrot and stick approach from the department. The Minister for State for Law Reform, James Brown, told the Irish Times that communities were effectively losing their public spaces due to the misuse of scrambler and quad bikes. And he said that we've seen Gaelic football and soccer pitches torn up by the use of the bikes. So as well as increased funding, the government's at an advanced stage of drafting legislation which will make it easier for the Garda to seize bikes which are being used improperly. Under those plans, those who get in trouble with the Garda will be banned from the membership of these government-funded bike clubs, Mr. Brown said. The minister also cited a number of serious injuries which have been caused by scrambler misuse. A woman was severely injured in North Dublin in a hit and run incident involving a scrambler, and that's just 3 years after a man suffered devastating bike injuries after he was hit by a bike while he sunbathed in a park. Mr. Brown said that the 2 distinct types of bike user have been identified. One group uses the bikes specifically for criminal purposes, such as transporting drugs. The others are young people who had a genuine interest in bikes but didn't see the damage they're doing, and these clubs will be targeting the latter of the 2 groups. Another project has been up and around in a place called Moyross for several years, and it has a dozen or so participants, and they have a field which they use as a makeshift track, although Mr. O'Byrne does hope that the county council is going to provide a more permanent home in the future. And the Garda Roads Policing Unit are involved. They provide motorcycle competency tests for participants. Nevertheless, of course, there's been some negativity towards the project, which Mr. O'Byrne understands. He says there's been a number of serious accidents around the estate. The problem reached a peak during the first COVID lockdown, when there were a number of people, estimated around 50, misusing bikes in the area. And he predicted another peak after Christmas when he said people get such bikes as presents. And the aim of the project is therefore to teach young people how to safely use a bike on a track with the required protection and get their adrenaline buzz out of the way in that fashion. Personally, I think they're quite a good idea. You may recall that I've mentioned the Circuit Carole in Paris, which has been a huge success after it was built, an actual full-size purpose-built racetrack to get street racers effectively off the roads of Paris and onto the track. Right, okay, so don't forget, if you want to, I've done that bit, haven't I? If you've enjoyed the show, do consider coming over to my coffee page. The link is on the screen there. You can find links to all the old shows over there. You'll also get an awful lot more over there. There are hundreds of better biking articles in all sorts of topics, for beginners, for intermediate riders, even stuff that will tickle the fancy of some advanced riders and annoy a few others, I know. But the important point is it gets you thinking. So do pop over to my coffee page there and see what's available. What's not available is the 120th anniversary edition of the Royal Enfield 650 Twin. To celebrate that anniversary, Royal Enfield in India put up 60 of each of their Interceptor 650 models and the GT 650 Continental model. And according to their press release, the 120 bikes were sold out in under 120 seconds. Why do I suspect a little bit of marketing hyperbole there? Anyway, nevertheless, the bikes were available on a first come first served basis, and they did sell out very quickly. So you've missed that particular opportunity. It was on December the 6th at 7 p.m. Indian Standard Time, apparently. You do still have a chance, though, to get hold of another British bike brand, but this time one that you've probably never heard of, DOT. I don't know if that's pronounced dot or not, but we'll stick with DOT. Now, I was vaguely aware of them as another long closed down British manufacturer. When I did a little bit of checking, Harry Reid apparently rode one of their bikes to a win at the 1908 TT, but it appears the brand has been revived. So let's take a quick look at a picture of one of them, if I can find it. Where's it gone? No, I've lost the picture. All right, let's get the stream up again. Dear, hang on a minute. Right, well, let me keep talking while Here we go. There's the correct one. That's the picture I was looking for. Right, so yes, okay. Right now, 2 bespoke motorcycles are available, both powered by the ER6 Kawasaki motor. That one is the Scrambler variant. So you've got a liquid cooled double overhead cam 650 parallel twin. It's a sensible choice, I suppose. It appears in a number of other motorcycles as well as Kawasaki's. It's got proven reliability. It's Euro 5 compliant. It makes a decent 67 horsepower. It's not the most rip-snortingly powerful motorcycle in the world, but it's a very usable engine. And the bikes come with a very light weight as well. So 169 kilos, which is just under 380 pounds, ready to roll. That's their curb weight. So that's pretty impressive low weight. That's lighter than my old 404, I think. They're handmade, so they should get decent performance from that lightweight and engine combo. The other bike is the Cafe Racer. If I click the right button, we'll get that picture up on screen. There it is. Beautifully moody shots, aren't they? They always are. The trellis frame is shared by both motorcycles, as is the it's over large 10-litre tank. One thing I'm not particularly keen on is the sort of exhaust cans. I think the one on the Scrambler is particularly ugly, if you happen to notice it. That one does look a little bit better on the Cafe Racer there. For a handmade bike, I have to say, though, the prices are extremely reasonable. The Scrambler will set you back £18,500 for the basic model, and the Cafe Racer is £21,000. The builders say they can't make the bikes for any less than that because everything is made in the UK. They have 6 engineers, and they say they can build 60 motorcycles a year. And the DOT name, well, it stands originally for devoid of trouble. So let's hope that does apply to that particular machine. I rather like the Scrambler, actually, I have to say, apart from that horrid exhaust can. I think it's a bit on my budget, though. The TT. Well, fans are obviously, we're all hoping to see the return of the TT in next June 2022. After the cancellation of the 2020 and 21 races due to COVID. But unfortunately, one event that won't be seen is the TT0 race for electric motorcycles. Now, it's been confirmed by the Enterprise Minister, Dr. Alex Allinson, that there will be no TT0 races either next year or in 2023. And he blamed what he called a slow uptake of electric motorcycles and referred back to a previous decision to pause the TT0 program that was taken in and that would have suspended the event for the 2020 and 2021 races, which are the ones that were eventually cancelled, of course. Excuse me. Now, the blame has been placed on high costs of participation and dwindling grids. The Department for Enterprises, the promoter of the event, and they said that the running of the class and participation of the associated competitors had been increasingly challenging. So, speaking this week, he said, with regards to TT0, in 2019, the department announced there will be a 2-year moratorium for the class due to a number of factors, not least the slow rate of development of clean emission sports bike within the motorcycle industry and the low number of participants in the event. And so TT0 is not scheduled for a return for the next 2 years. Now, he also went on to say, in terms of what happens at the TT in 2024, the department is certainly looking at other possibilities. Whilst there's been a slow uptake in terms of electric motorbikes, there's an increasing emphasis on hydrogen-powered bikes. So looking at that decision, clearly it's commercial. Yes, there's no doubt a financial cost to the department, but personally, I think it's a really short-sighted one, given the growth in the sales of electric motorcycles in the past 2 years. And as I was explaining on the last show, the sales of electric motorcycles have pushed conventional manufacturers like Suzuki out of the top 10 altogether, as V-Moto have moved into that 10th place bestseller in the UK. Now, it's no real surprise that there's a sudden interest in electric motorcycles, but more to the point, there is actually a move by mainstream manufacturers to move towards electric motorcycles too. And you'll recall another story from a few weeks back that Ducati will now be providing the motive power for the Moto E series that runs at GP events. So that's a very, very definite recognition by a major contributor to motorcycle racing generally, that electric motorcycles have a future in racing events. Now, it may actually be true that hydrogen-powered bikes are being worked on, but it is very much in the background. And the fact is that right now, there are mainstream manufacturers such as Harley-Davidson with their Livewire and BMW with their scooter, which I also featured a few weeks back, who actually have mainstream powered two-wheelers on sale right now. Yes, I accept that neither Harley nor BMW are likely to field a team at the Moto E event, but the word is that Triumph aren't far behind. So personally, I think this is a really poor decision, actually. The Isle of Man TT is a showcase event. However important we feel the TT is over here in the UK, we have to recognise that on the world stage, it's a sideshow, which is why we've never seen riders like Valentino Rossi competing there. And frankly, I think that it's a missed opportunity, not just to host and help develop the next generation of electric motorcycles, but also to keep the TT in the greater world view. Anyway, that's my opinion. And linked to that story in a way is another one on synthetic fuel. Now, however attractive I personally find the sound of electric motorcycle, the zero accelerating hard is actually a bit like listening to a jet engine spooling up. I find that quite a fascinating sound. But there are plenty of riders who are wedded to the sound and the feel of an internal combustion engine. And for those, the prospect of synthetic fuel or e-fuel has been held out as a way to dodge the proposed ban on conventional internal combustion engines by allowing conventional fuel engines to remain on sale. Right now, European MPs and governments are actually deciding on the EU Commission proposal that all new cars sold by 2035 must be 100% zero emissions. And if that decision is taken, it would effectively leave no back door for e-fuel cars. Now, whether that'll go ahead is a good open question, because Porsche, Mazda and Bosch are all amongst major brands developing e-fuels. And they have been pushing the idea that synthetic fuel is clean since it's carbon neutral. It's just one problem. Carbon neutral does not mean tailpipe emission free. Now, I pointed this out some weeks ago, but a new study has been done to demonstrate that cars running on e-fuels emit just as much NOx, nitrogen oxide, and nitrogen dioxide as cars based on fuel made from oil. So whilst the carbon emissions overall are cut by as much as 85%, according to this particular test, which was done by a French research organisation, IFP Energies Nouvelle, on behalf of green transport think tank Transport and Environment. They did find that the motors running on the e-fuel emitted the same levels of nitrogen oxide, NO, and NO2 as standard E10 fuel. Now, using standard test cycles, they checked between the standard petrol and 3 different synthetic blends, and they found that the NOx levels were almost identical. They also found that the engine produced more carbon monoxide and ammonia. Julia Poliskanova, who's Senior Director for Vehicles and E-Mobility at T&E, said the e-fuels have lost the race to clean up cars. And she went on to say, no amount of spin can overcome the science of burning hydrocarbons. As long as fuel is combusted in engines, toxic air will persist in our cities. Lawmakers who leave loopholes for e-fuels and emissions targets are condemning the public to decades more avoidable air pollution. Supplying just 10% of new cars with e-fuels instead of electrifying them would require 23% more renewable electricity generation in Europe. The credibility of Europe's clean car policy is on the line, and any diversion into e-fuels is a lease of life for old polluting engines. The report concluded e-fuels will do little to alleviate air quality problems in the cities, and e-fuels will only be for the wealthy, and that battery electric cars offer drivers the cleanest, most efficient and affordable way to decarbonise. So it all sounds fairly damning for e-fuels, but I think some balance is needed. Firstly, I note that with no e-fuels currently on sale, the French lab had to produce 100 litres of their own synthetic fuel. So there's no guarantee that what the vehicle manufacturers are working on behind the scenes is actually the same blend as the test fuel. Secondly, they then tested it on a bog standard Mercedes-Benz A-Class, running it on 3 different mixes plus conventional E10. Now, if the e-fuel was chemically identical to E10 unleaded, as you would expect if you wanted a standard engine to run well, it's hardly surprising that the exhaust products were the same, because the fuel would be the same. Just as engines have to be modified to deal with the zero lead fuels we use at the moment from the older ones that needed lead, it's almost certain that ICEs can and will be modified to run synthetic blends, and that alone could change the exhaust products balance. Third, the statement claims the synthetic petrol causes almost 3 times more carbon monoxide, which they say deprives the heart and brain of oxygen compared to petrol. Well, CO, carbon monoxide, is converted, it's oxidized to carbon dioxide by the catalytic converter, which leads me to wonder whether the output from the e-fuel they produced actually poisoned the cat. They did actually measure twice the level of ammonia from the synthetic fuel, which is slightly confusing, I have to say. Fourthly, the press release says that Porsche has invested around 24 million in a project in a bid to keep models like its iconic 911 on sale after petrol and diesel cars are banned. Well, in car development terms, $24 million is peanuts. Fifth, they claim that a car running on e-fuels over 5 years will cost a driver approximately £8,500 more than running a battery electric car. Well, again, we have to, what's the baseline they're operating on here? I assume that they're anticipating the price of electricity remains unchanged. My guess is that with revenue from conventional fuels dropping off as more people switch to electric, it's almost certain government coffers will have to be topped up, and that will mean a tax on electricity. So that will almost certainly level the playing field. They also assume, number 6 point, that the e-fuel will have to be produced here in Europe and require that extra demand in electricity production here. In fact, Porsche have already stated that they aim to produce e-fuel in Chile. They've already started on the project, and they will be using wind power alone. So there will be no need to burn fossil fuels to generate the electricity. And I'll talk about that more in a future show. Tucked away in the doom and gloom is a small gleam of light as well. The report does concede that particle emissions are considerably reduced from the trial e-fuels. Transport and Environment didn't rubbish the concept of e-fuels altogether, but they said that they should be prioritised for planes. Well, plenty to get your teeth into on that particular item, whether you agree or not. A couple of comments have come in. Sue, she says, I think it's the danger of crashing on public roads that puts the TT off electric bike racing. I assume you're meaning the possibility of having to clear up an electric motorcycle which has crashed. I know that it's more of a challenge to the fire services. One of the things we actually were talking about putting into Biker Down when I was involved with Kent Fire and Rescue on that particular project was how to advise Biker Down attendees to actually approach a crashed electric motorcycle. I don't know if it ever got included in the end, but I suppose, yes, that is a potential problem. You could have a seriously high-speed crash with an electric motorcycle. Tony says they lack character, sound awful, and can only barely manage 2 laps. Well, yes, but a petrol engine bike can only manage 2 laps. It still needs to be refueled, Tony. So, there is, it swings and roundabouts on this one. Lack character. Well, I don't know. Have you ridden a Zero? I wouldn't say a Zero lacks character. The get up and go from zero, as it were, 0 RPM. Is quite astonishing for a relatively low-powered bike. And as I say, I don't think they sound awful. I actually really like the sound. So it's a matter of opinion. I frankly hate the sound of a Harley with loud pipes. So it's very personal, and it's not something that everybody can dismiss because of their own opinion on that one. Right, okay. Sue says when the GP raced electric, they had a green and red light on them. If the red light was on, they should not touch the crashed vehicle. Okay, I didn't know that. So that's interesting to know. As I say, Ducati will be providing the electric bikes for Moto E in the coming season. So it'll be interesting to see how they get on with that. Right, anyway, on to today's final point. Now, this was something that cropped up in an article I read from New Zealand Herald. And it was written by a chap called John Williamson. He's the chairman of Road Safe Northland and Northland Road Safety Trust. And he wrote it in an article entitled Northland Motorcycle Safety Strategy. And it was basically, he was arguing that there was an increase in accidents involving older motorcyclists. Now, I kind of hate to be rude about anybody's writing, but if I'm totally honest, the article sort of meandered around like one of Northland's twisty back roads. I did manage to get up there in 2019 and do a bit of sightseeing up there. One moment he's suggesting that motorcyclists tend to fall below the radar in many road safety conversations. And then points out he has himself 0 riding experience with just one off-road farm bike ride to his name, which predictably crashed. So perhaps there's a bit of a connection there. The usual cost to the community line is duly delivered. As he says, in the period of 2016 to 21, there have been 385 motorcycle crashes in Northland, causing 21 deaths, 160 serious injuries, 190 minor injuries, with a total social cost of 213 million NZ dollars. And just to prove the problem hasn't gone away, he says, we have had 5 motorcycle fatalities this year. And he predicts that with COVID measures about to ease in New Zealand, in the Auckland area, the police are bracing themselves for an increasing number of motorcycle crashes over the next couple of months. And then he goes on to point the finger at older riders. He says recent research indicates a 90% increase in riders in the 50 to 85 year age group compared with 10 years ago, and they account for over 50% of motorcyclists. It's this group having accidents which is especially alarming. Well, think about it. If a group comprises over half of the total number of riders on the road, it would be rather surprising if they didn't have a significant number of the accidents, wouldn't it? All you need is actually for the group to be at equal risk to other groups, and that would happen automatically. And as it happens, it's a pretty good bet that this age group are also recreational riders covering a lot more miles than younger riders who tend to use bikes to get from A to B, shorter journeys. So that would doubly skew the odds and ensure, in fact, that this older age group actually crops up in the stats more often. He does make one solid point that older riders are more likely to sustain fractures, dislocations, and internal injuries. Bones are more brittle. I'm not sure about internal injuries, but certainly fractures. That is definitely a point. That's also true when he says that riders tend to lose muscle mass. And that, again, that's correct, although it's likely not to be a serious issue until riders are well on into their 60s. Yeah, we do lose muscle mass, I think, from about 40 onwards. But it's very slow initially, speeds up as we get older. But it can be compensated for by some modest exercise. We lose the number of muscle fibers, but we rebuild and strengthen the fibers that remain. So, yes, it doesn't have to be end of riding career. Impaired vision is something else he flags up. Well, yes, I would say that as we get older, our vision deteriorates, but I've got no evidence for this, but my guess is that most cyclists are probably going to be more aware of this as an issue than the average elderly driver. Something else he cited as a problem is slow reaction times, which again is also true, but believe it or not, our reactions start to slow down from about 25 onwards. The same studies actually that show that our reactions slow as we age also shows that older riders and drivers actually compensate with better strategies and greater efficiency in making the right decision when we face difficult decisions as we ride. I've talked about many times that the biggest barrier to a rapid response to a threat is not our reaction time, because the increase in reaction time actually goes up in milliseconds rather than seconds. The biggest threat is actually recognizing that there is a threat in the first place, which can take 2 or 3 seconds. And the response of freezing, doing nothing in an emergency, or overreacting. And we can train those out of ourselves. Okay, I don't find this road safety advocate's analysis of motorcycle crashes particularly accurate. But I really struggle with his suggestion that older riders could switch to a trike in order to eliminate many of the things that riders need to worry about. Now, I'm assuming that what he's not talking about is something like the Nikon, the 3-wheeled tilting motorcycle that unfortunately I didn't get the chance to ride in New Zealand, or a Reliant Robin, come to that. I assume that he's thinking of something like this, which is the 20k Polaris slingshot. Now, the problem is that he says that if the thrill of riding at speed with the wind in your face and the sense of freedom are your thing, I don't see how adding an extra wheel to your vehicle is likely to keep you out of trouble and, as he puts it rather emotively, out of a wheelchair. Does riding with an extra wheel at the front and sitting side by side with the passenger rather than ahead of them actually change our attitude to using the roads? Given that so many people have totally avoidable crashes, even in cars, people go into junctions and collide with other vehicles. The evidence suggests that, in fact, when you normalize the numbers of motorcycles and cars on the road, car drivers collide with other cars just as often as they collide with motorcycles. And car drivers lose control on corners and crash. I honestly don't see that just sticking another wheel on the car or on the bike and turning it into a three-wheeler is the answer. I'd say that it's an attitudinal issue, and I'd say that's an education issue. I'm guessing, unless there is a before and after study of what happens when you switch a conventional motorcycle for a three-wheeler, I guess unless there is a study out there which has been done on that, I'm guessing that John Williamson is himself guessing on this particular issue. Right, okay, so that's enough for today. Tony says, when electric vehicles catch fire, keep well away. Well, yes, okay, wouldn't dispute that. As I said, we did have a debate about that with the fire services. I don't know how often they catch fire, though, compared with the conventional petrol engined vehicles. So, yes, there are problems. We do need to be aware of these problems, but we also need to put them in perspective, and that means understanding the problem on both sides of the divide, as it were. Right, okay, so that's it for today. Just a couple of quick reminders before I go off air. Don't forget those gift vouchers are available. You can use them yourself. You can give them to a loved one or a friend. You can use them to save on an online coaching session or a training course next year. And don't forget, the next webcast is going out in first Wednesday in January, which will be the 5th. I'll be taking a look at filtering, and there is a picture of one of the hazards of filtering. I'll be asking whether or not filtering is an art or a science, and whether it needs balls or brains. Okay, and I'll take that from my perspective as a 16-year-old courier veteran. Tickets are £5. You can book online. The site is open to take bookings now, and I'll just put the link up to that for you. So if you want to come along and grab a ticket for that, do so. And hopefully I'll see you after Christmas. And after that, the next Science of Being Seen, I'll be doing something a little bit more different. I'll tell you about that in due course. Next Science of Being Seen will be Wednesday, 2nd of February. So thank you very much once again for looking in. I do hope to see you on the next show, which will be on what's today? Sunday, isn't it? So it'll be Wednesday. We're getting close to Christmas now, but hopefully see you on Wednesday. That's it for today. Take it easy out there. Stay shiny side up.